some methods in which you can engage the customers to understand the requirements. So it's not just a one-on-one meeting. It could be multiple ways in which you can engage the customers to understand the requirements effectively. So depending on the context, some of them would be more effective in a particular context. So we will learn those techniques, right? So that's on the illustration part. So this helps us understand the requirements better, right? So that's the first topic. That's the most important topic which we'll cover. The second most important topic is, once we understand the requirements, we have to document it in a way which is clear, unambiguous, and complete, right? So we are targeting that once the requirement is completed, the technical team can actually take it on from there and design the system, right? So there are no multiple ways of interpretation of that requirement. You're ensuring that there is one single way of interpreting the requirement, and you're also ensuring that you've covered all aspects of the requirements, right? So these are the two things, right? So clarity or ambiguity, and the second one is the completeness of the requirements, right? Now there are some frameworks for doing that. Earlier they used to do the structured analysis, which was data flows and ER diagrams. Currently we use object orientation, which is UML based. Use cases are the tools which we use for documenting the requirements. And most popularly, we have the agile methodologies coming, specifically in this analytics and then the mobility related projects. We have use cases or user stories for capturing the requirements in an agile Scrum model, right? So we'll cover this comprehensive set of various ways in which you can document the requirements, right? So these two are the main tasks of a business analyst, right? So they cover the crux of what a business analyst would do. Added to that, a business analyst would also help the project manager in planning for the requirement related activities. So it will help identify what are the various tasks a business analyst would do, so that and also provide the estimates or a breakup of the work breakdown structure of how what needs to be done in the project, right? It will also help in ensuring the managing the scope, changes, and risks of the project, right? So that those aspects we'll learn as part of the requirements planning, right? So these three are the the key knowledge areas. Apart from that, since you are the guy who are connecting all the the business users, the technical users, the QA guys, right? You also need to learn how to manage the communication, right? So we learn how to draft a communication plan, right? So how to ensure that all the information needs of the various stakeholders are met, right? So that's a small session, 1 hour session, not too complicated. We'll learn that. Now, once the system is ready, right? You've captured the requirements. The technical team has developed the system, right? Now what? You need to test the system, right? Though the responsibility of the QA team is to test it out, usually the industry would want a business analyst to oversee this process to ensure that from a functional point of view the system is completely tested. So what we are learning here is that we are covering the complete end-to-end testing, right? So we are learning what are the various stages of testing, basically the unit testing, the SIT, and then the UAT, right? What we do under each one of them, right? What are the various types of testing? We have white box testing, the black box testing, right? And then and what are the phases of the testing? What are the steps involved in testing, right? When you take up a UAT or an SIT, right? First you would plan for your test, right? So the delivery would be a test plan document or a test strategy document coming up, and then you would you would prepare your test cases. So how do you derive your test cases from a use case or from the requirement, right? So we'll cover that, and then you execute it, and then when there are defects, you have to analyze those defects and then provide the insights for the technical team to fix them, right? So how do you go about doing this analysis? So these are some of the things which we'll cover in the solution assessment and validation, right? Also, in some cases, a business analyst is also involved in conceptualizing new projects, identifying opportunities, building a business case for it, and then getting budgets approved, right? So usually this is the top end of the spectrum in the complexity, right? And unless you are a very senior guy in the organization who understands both technology and business, usually a business analyst is not involved in this, right? So that's a practical view, right? In fact, this activity is actually evolving into a different role called as an enterprise architect, right? Now, let me give you a context of what we have looked at, right? So the 6 knowledge areas what I have just explained is actually coming out from an international organization called IIBA, right? So it stands for International Institute of Business Analysis. So they have published this book called as Business Analyst Book of Knowledge, which categorizes the role of a business analyst into these 6 areas. They also offer a certification called as CBAP, Certified Business Analyst Professional, right? So the course is aligned to that certification. However, we are not focusing on certification. The focus is on ensuring that we have our fundamentals right. So the target audience is mostly people who are coming from a non-business analyst background, right, and want to get into a business analyst role. So it could be, you know, fresher graduates coming out, or it could be technical team moving into a, you know, into a business analyst role, right, or people from other industries as well who would, you know, get into this role, right? So yeah, the course is specifically for an IT business analyst, because, you know, the term analyst and business analyst are have various connotations in various industries, right? So we are talking about a business analyst who is working on an IT project, right? And what is the role of a business analyst in a typical IT project? So that's the scope of this course, right? So
excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I have a question. Whatever you will cover, is it just for IT, or like the business analysts can get into any project, right? You know, for finance, healthcare, anything of that sort. So will it encompass everything?
Finance or healthcare? So you're talking about the industries, or you're talking about an industry as such? Like, you know, if you look at an financial industry, right? So you have a financial analyst, right? So what he does is he would look at you know, the financial statements and then identify what are the companies to invest in, right? So that's a financial analyst. So that's what I meant, that, you know, analyst in a broader sense, right? But if you're working as a business analyst for implementing IT projects in financial industry or healthcare or retail, you still have to have this knowledge area, this knowledge of what we're learning here, right? So it's common across industries, but, you know, the term analyst is a vague term, right? So you could be called as a financial analyst who is doing some financial statement analysis. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at about a typical IT project, which could be across industries. It could be in a retail industry, it could be in a financial services industry, it could be in a banking or healthcare. It could be anywhere, right? So the process would be the same. Did that clarify your question?
Yeah, thank you. That does clear my doubt. And one more question would be, like, as far as I know about business analysis, there's no coding to it, right? The maximum technical knowledge required would be SQL, right?
Yes. Yes.
More of a management role, right?
Yes, it's more of a requirements management and the client expectation management, ensuring that, you know, so basically, you know, you're focusing on the functionality rather than, you know, the designing and development of the solution, right? Now, let me jump a couple of slides and then show you, this slide, right? Now, a typical SDLC, you might be aware, would involve initiation, and then you capture your requirements, then your technical architect would design, a developer would code, and then the testing would happen and implementation, right? So if you have to tell the role of a business analyst, it would be predominantly in phase 2, where you would plan for your requirements, you would capture your requirements and document them, churning out the BRD. That's a main deliverable coming out of your requirements analysis, right? Which will be used by the technical architect for designing the system. Then the programmers would actually write the code, right? So there is nowhere that a business analyst is involved in either designing of your system in a particular technology like .NET or Java, or neither he is coding, right? So that's responsibilities are clearly defined, right? Phase 3 is owned by a technical architect, phase 4 is owned by a programmer, right? To an extent, you are involved in the testing, wherein you'll oversee the testing effects from a functional point of view, right? So your role is limited to phase 2 and phase 5, wherein you're just focusing on the requirements and also ensuring that you're validating those requirements. Okay?
Yeah.
So again, so answer your question again, where do you use your SQL or anything? In some cases where, let's say, you're testing the system. Let's say you have created a customer, and then let me take an example, and then it will make sense to you, right? So there is a functionality wherein you are registering a new customer, right? So you have actually entered the details and then clicked on submit, right? Now, how do you ensure that the data has been stored in your system? Right? So that's one instance wherein you actually go into the database, maybe use a SQL query, and then see whether that particular customer was actually being inserted into the database or not, right? So it helps you in some of these activities, right? Also, when you are interfacing with other system, right? So when you have to send some data, and then you have to take some data and then store in your database. In which table or in which part of the database should you store, right? So that these activities are called as data modeling, right? Basically understanding what is the underlying data structure of the system, and where does this data needs to go and then fit in, right? So that again would be part of your requirements, right? So interface analysis, as we call it as. That's part of one of the elicitation techniques, right? Okay. So having said that, it's not technical yet. So we're just understanding it from an analytical point of view. We are not dependent on a technology like Oracle or DB2 or anything. It's a conceptual view, a logical view. So we're just focusing from a data point of what data needs to be stored, right? So this is the data. So you're just limiting yourself to there, right? You're not talking about a syntax of how this data is created in a particular database and all. So that's off limits for a business analyst.
So
right?
Just if I got you right, I mean it's limited to just in order to communicate with the database, right? And as well as in the later stages of testing, that's where we
Yes.
use, right? And
Yes.
because I used to do data staging before, so
Yeah.
you said like that's not what we are going to do, right?
No. That's not what
For
we are going to do.
accessing data.
Yeah. So just basically to it's a add-on skill which you generally gather over a period of time, right? So it's not your basic skill what you need to have as a business analyst, right? So yeah, so that's what we'll follow the course outline. So we in fact we are preparing yourself for CBAP, Certified Business Analyst Professional, but you still can't take that exam because you need to have some years of experience to take that exam, certification, right? So you'll not be eligible for it, right? Unless you have worked as a business analyst, you cannot take CBAP, right? But having said that, we are following the course outline for CBAP certification, which is based on the Business Analyst Book of Knowledge, or BABOK as it's called as, right? So we are aligned to that, and I have pitched in my practical experience wherever required, right? So what is the industry requires? So it's a best of both, right? So we have taken the framework as a certification, and then I have plugged in the components of what is that you need in the actual industry to work, right? So so we are not talking completely theoretical, but we are getting a actual view of what's happening in the industry, right? So that's what we learn in this course, right? And I've been adding topics as required. It's been like 3.5 years now since I've been teaching, right? So more or less the course has been matured, right? So it's comprehensive enough to meet the requirements of a business analyst job, right?
Okay.
So yeah, a little more details. As part of planning, we'll understand the stakeholders, identify requirements, estimate them, manage scope, change, and risk. As part of elicitation, we'll understand the 10 elicitation models. Interface analysis again is one of them, right? I'll take case studies wherever relevant, right? Like some practical case studies, some simpler case studies, so that you're not digressing from the topic, right? So depending on the context, I'll switch accordingly, right? So most of the case studies in the initial topics would be on the actual experience, some of the complex projects I've handled. But when the topic gets complex, I use simpler examples like maybe a hospital management system, a library management system, or maybe a ATM or a bank, right? So that you're not overwhelmed by the requirement. You're focusing on how to analyze and then document the requirement, right?
Okay.
So your analysis and design or documentation, I was basically into these 4 types, your structured analysis, data flows, ER diagrams. Object orientation is based on UML. There are 9 diagrams in UML, right? And UML is a modeling language which covers end-to-end of your analysis and design. So it's not just talking about requirements, but also the design process. So use cases would capture the requirements, the rest of them would capture your design, right? So we'll focus a lot on the use cases and have a understanding about the rest of the topics later, right? And then we'll understand how to capture requirements in an agile model, right? How do you do the process modeling, the activity diagrams, swim lanes, or flow charts? We'll learn about that, right? So communication plan, what are the artifacts, what are the modes of communication? There's some of the things which you learn as part of communication. We learn the steps involved in SIT and UAT. How does it actually happen in a in a particular project, right? So what are the various steps involved in it? Where are you involved, right? So we'll learn that, right? Enterprise analysis, I'm not going to cover this in detail. I'm just going to give you an overview because it's a advanced topic, right? At this point in time, we don't really have the understanding to contribute in this phase, right? So it's mostly a high-level overview. In fact, this enterprise analysis is actually, being handled as a separate role. They call it as enterprise architects, right? So there is also framework called as TOGAF, TOGAF, right? So you can Google for that. You get basically, this is what they do. The TOGAF certified guys. There's a frameworks called as Archmate and all. So that's the most complex topic again, wherein you identify opportunities and then maintain your overall business architecture, right? So I'll give you an overview. It's basically a one session on this, right? Yeah. So the audience again is somebody who doesn't have a understanding about business analyst role, right? So I assume that you don't have any understanding about IT or even a business analyst role. So there are no prerequisites, right? Only thing I look at is you should have good analytical skills, you should have good interpersonal skills, ability to communicate with people. I think that's a good enough skill to get into a business analyst role, right? I think I've shown you the training material as well, how it's organized, right? Knowledge of the SDLC, you'll gain it in the first couple of sessions. Since you come from a technical background, I don't think this is required for you. And you tend to gain the domain of functional understanding over a period of time, right? So these are not, some skills which are mandatory, right? So you need to have good analytical and interpersonal skills. Knowledge of IT will gain in this, in this course. And the domain of functional understanding again comes from your, effort in understanding a particular industry, right? So this is something which you cannot cover in a course, right? So each of those industries is quite big, and I don't think any course can cover that. Like even if you take banking or healthcare, right? We just can't cover the functional knowledge in a session or two.
No,
I hope you understand, right?
Yeah,
So though having said that, it helps to understand that particular domain to perform your role effectively. So that's what you mean, right? So it's still not mandatory that you have to have that functional knowledge. I can still go ahead and then capture the requirements for a bank or a hospitality industry or maybe a retail if I have a good analytical and interpersonal skills. If I can actually understand requirement and document them, analyze and document them, I can still go ahead and do it, right? But understanding the business would make it easier, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically what I wanted to cover. So that's the role. In fact, it actually dovetails into the next topic, which is the industry overview and all. I explained how a typical client organization is, how is a IT organization structure, what is a project governance structure, the steps in SDLC, and the various models of SDLC, right? So that's some context to you. And I have started a batch, and we have completed 2 sessions. So basically, I've covered this topic, right? So what I just told you, the part 1 is completed, right? So that's where we are. So again, You can decide yourself. If you are in a hurry, you can actually get into that batch, right? Otherwise, we can look at the next batch, what you can, when it starts over. Right? So yeah, any questions you have or anything, which you want to ask?
When you say about the batch, right? So you already are where you're gonna leave today, or how much have you covered?
It started. I have covered 2 sessions. So the topics I've covered is the industry overview. So basically telling, how is a IT, and I have those recorded for you as well. So I can provide you the recording so that you can, go through the recording today, and continue on from tomorrow. So tomorrow's session, we would actually, go as per this 6 knowledge areas, right? So the first section was on the industry overview, basically orienting the people to get used to how IT industry works. The next 6 knowledge areas or 6 parts would be the 6 knowledge areas what I have just mentioned about the role of a business analyst, right? So we haven't yet got into the role of a business analyst, right? I've just covered the introduction, given a perspective of how the industry works, but we haven't got into the role of a business analyst yet. So tomorrow would be the first. Starting tomorrow, I would be starting with the requirements planning, and that's where the role of a business analyst would start. All right. So in fact, there is no dependency that you need to understand the previous topic to get into this, right? So this is basically a broader understanding of how the industry works, right? So that's where we stand currently.
And
yeah. Any other questions, Ali?
Can you go back? Can you go to part 1? Yeah, I mean, go down. I mean, to slide 12 or that industry. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Are you not?
So basically,
this is not big deal.
This is how a client is organized, right? So usually I explain how the IT team is organized, right? So you have basically these 3 teams. You have a development team, you have a QA team, and then there is an ops team, right? Yeah. And each one have their roles cut out, right? So they focus on development, they focus on testing, and they focus on maintenance of the applications, right? And how does the transition happen? What are the various phases, and how do we each one handle it, right? And when a vendor is involved, like somebody like an Accenture or a TCS is involved, right? So generally they are, this is a generic view again, not that all the organizations are in this way. Right? You have people focused on a particular industry, and then you have people focused on some particular technology, right? And then when a project team is formed, you have representation from all these teams, and then you have an on-site offshore team, and then you have a client team, and then there are some levels of escalations of management teams sitting above your project teams, right? So I explain all those details, and then I talk about the various phases of a project, right? Who handles what in this, right? So that gives you a bit, a high-level overview about how industry works, right?
Okay, and after this, I saw some software life cycles, right? Models. Can you go to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is a typical SDLC model, right? Now, there are variations which occur on that SDLC model, right? So this is the simplest one, waterfall. Then there is a V-shaped model. Then there is a prototyping model. Right? So then there is an iterative model, there are spiral model, and each one of them would be relevant in a particular context, right? It would have its own advantages or disadvantages, and depending on the context, you pick which is the model and it's a decision of a project manager, right? So this is more like an awareness session, so that when you get into a project, you understand why is it being handled this way, because this is a context maybe, and so we are using this methodology, right? So not all projects would be having these 7 phases, in the sequential order, right? So there would be some juggling or some, changes to the existing phases. So I just cover those as part of this.
Are you not going to go models in detail?
Not in detail. I generally cover all of these in one session, right? So starting from waterfall to the agile, I would cover it in one single session. A 1-hour session, right? Because we just need to understand what is a high-level overview about how projects are executed, right? It's not our responsibility to create the project plans and get into the details about it.
I get it. I mean,
Right? So,
are you gonna tell me about those models today? How does it work?
not today. Yeah, I mean, I was told that it would be a demonstration about and basically a course outline, right?
Yeah.
So and if you can confirm your participation, maybe we can spend time on that, or I can actually point you to a recording. You can actually go through that, and we can spend some time tomorrow once the session is complete to clarify your doubts. Right? Or I can even spend an hour with you to explain this topic in detail, right? So because it's just one session, I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay. And what time do you usually take the class?
It's 7:30 a.m. IST. So which time zone are you in?
I'm
EST
in
or PST?
EST, yeah.
EST would be what? I think it's 9 p.m. EST.
No, not EST,
Right?
PST. In California, so Pacific.
Pacific. All right. Pacific would be what? 6 p.m. EST. It's PST. Right?
Sorry.
So what is the time there now?
It's 9:55 a.m.
9:55 Eastern. So it's 1.5 hour behind me, right? Yeah, it's 6 p.m. for you.
6
I
p.m.
hope that works. Every day.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. So yeah. So talk to your training coordinator. Once he confirms it, I can provide access to the training. I mean, you work out the administrative issues with the coordinator, right?
Sure.
Once he confirms the participation, I think I'll share the recording. Leave your email ID with the person. I'll reach out to you on the email. You'll get access to the training material, the complete training material.
Yeah.
And that's how we take.
If I confirm my, participation, then starting tomorrow we'll go to, we'll
Yeah.
start, right?
Rather tonight for you. Yeah, tonight.
Tonight.
Right?
And then about these
Yeah.
models, all you can spare some time.
I can take a separate session. Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, that's
So maybe over the weekend, or maybe we can take up a half an hour session and then
Okay.
take it out. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Ali. So um, so take your time, decide, and then let me know. Let the coordinator know. So let Satya know. He will keep me posted about it. All right.
Sure, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Have a nice